Hello and welcome to this Return to Coaching Q&A session brought to you by the NFA Technical Area. The NFA Technical Area is a new platform we are using to support our amazing volunteers in grassroots football. It will be used to host training, CPD and resources for all different roles involved in grassroots football. Today we will be focusing on your questions and concerns surrounding the return to football and what problems or issues might arise due to the long period of time players have spent away from the game. Our expert coach development team are on hand to give advice and opinions in this area and on anything else that crops up. Unfortunately, as you can see in the top right hand corner, Northants FA are not in a position to be able to discuss the return to football guidance and regulations that will be put in place prior to football returning. This is simply because we have not received this information from the FA yet. The FA have submitted their proposed return to football plan to the government for approval, but until the government give the FA the green light, they can't share it with us and we can't share it with you. The government have given the FA a provisional date of the 22nd of March to get this approval. However, I do know that the FA have pushed back to the government on this, as they quite rightly don't feel 7 days is enough time to read, digest and implement the guidance if football is to return on the 29th of March. We are delighted that you are all so keen to get back to football so quickly, but it is vital that no matches, training or unaffiliated activity takes place prior to the guidance being received and implemented. Any plans being made should also be delayed until after the guidance has been received so that you can ensure you are compliant. I must take this opportunity to remind you that any football activity taking place at the moment, which is currently against the law, will be investigated and any breaches will be reported to the police. We can't wait to get back to football, but everyone's safety has to be our priority. Now, let's move on to the Q&A session. I hope you find it enjoyable and useful. To start with, we're going to think about what your concerns are, what do you want to know and how we can help you. So let's get into your questions so that our team can answer them for you.
What I'm looking to get out of it really is selfish, I'll be honest. I'm looking to sort of re-energise myself after the time off we've had. The enthusiasm has waned a little bit, even after all this time. So primarily, I want to infuse myself, so I can actually, then go back and infuse the kids. My background has always been, more interested in player development than winning games or etc. etc. But it seems that everybody at the moment just wants games, and games. And as soon as people are already arranging friendlies from day one, that we can start again, rather than just get the kids back used to playing again and developing. I've got an under 8 age group at the minute, but effectively they've missed a year. So in my head, they're a year behind that I've got to try and catch up. So as I say, it's for a selfish reason. Try re-energise myself so I can then impart that onto them.
Thanks, Keith. I think that's a really useful insight for us as well from a county point of view, because it's something that we thought might happen. People becoming disengaged in the sport that they love just because of the time away from it. So I think it's a really great point. And I don't know if I don't know who wants to go first in terms of response to that, guys. Any takers?
It's an interesting one, I think, Keith, because I don't think you're alone at all in terms of what you've suggested, going back and getting into coaching. From a few different sports, when people have had time out, it's difficult to get going again. And I think you kind of question yourself in terms of what you've been doing. And then you look at social media feeds and, like you say, you look at the league websites and what's happening and people trying to get back. And you start to question yourself a little bit. But the age group that you're working with, I think you said under 8s, is that right?
Yeah, that's right, Quinton.
Yeah, I think it's a terrific age to work with, isn't it? I mean, I started my group at under 7s. We're under 14s now. And so expectations, because I guess you've been through these age groups before, so you've kind of got a benchmark as to where the kids might be, but because of it's been kind of uniquely challenging in terms of them not playing pretty much for a season. And then, of course, last year, I don't know if you were affected by the weather as well, because an awful lot of fixtures were lost last season as well. So they're perhaps not where you might expect them to be based on your experience of working with those age groups previously. Is that right?
Yeah, I'd say that, Quinton. Obviously, the weather did play a part in it as well, and some of the pitches you were playing on doesn't, really allow you to develop. Being that young age as well, we were struggling to get a midweek training venue, so that's in part. So the actual contact time with the kids was very limited, and they are. I wouldn't say they're the best ability to start with. They've improved definitely, which is always the only thing you can ask for. But I do feel we're still that little bit behind, and now everybody, just seems to want to rush and get games going again rather than let's get back to basics. And what's the biggest thing that's going to affect us is that we're going to obviously step next season up to under 9s and go into 7-a-side.
Yeah.
So I feel we haven't captured enough of what we need to do at the younger age groups, the 5-a-side, before we make that step up.
Yeah. What sort of work do you do with your group, Keith? What would a normal session look like?
We mix it up. There'd be some individual technical individual technical things, ball each, then split it into smaller groups. Always have games, either be it small-sided, overloaded.
Yeah.
So there is a lot of game emphasis in the training. But obviously, I think the mentality as well, like they seem to want. They just want to play. I mean, the technical stuff they struggle to focus on, and concentrate only having a short amount of time. I don't want to spend an hour just passing back and forth to each other. Yeah. I do want to try and encourage it on. So we mix it up, as much ball contact time as we can.
Yeah. I mean, for me, how many have you got in your group, Keith?
10.
10. Again, good number. So for me, what you're doing sounds great. It sounds like you've got your arrival activities going. They're getting lots of contact with the ball, and you're getting into games as much as possible, and you're shifting the emphasis of those games as well, which is great. I suppose, just from my experience, when I start to feel a little bit jaded, what I tend to do is start to focus a little bit on individuals and working through kind of personal challenges with them and looking for developments so we can share where they want to go. And that just gives me a little bit of a platform then to see the improvements and judge improvements. And from there, you start to feel a little bit better about yourself, and you get that enthusiasm back because you can see the difference that you're making.
I think whilst development has always been my priority, I have got sucked into games, obviously, as you do. Yeah. Sometimes also it's consistent because we've had the group of 10. We initially started, we take 10 to a game. We play 5-a-side, so 5 would play one half, 5 would play the second half. Yeah. And to be honest, I could be spending as much time dealing with the 5 off the pitch as on the pitch.
Yeah.
We changed that.
Yeah.
We actually it only takes 7 to a game now.
Right.
Rotate it.
Yeah.
So they get more playing time.
Okay. Whether it's helpful, I don't know. But my team, because you mentioned that you were just moving into 7v7, I actually had 14 signed on at 7v7, which was the maximum amount you could have. And where my team's based is in South Northants, and we play in the Milton Keynes League. But of course, the Milton Keynes League then goes into Bedford. So we'd find that actually we were doing a 40-minute journey to get to Bedford to play 20-minute halves to travel back another 45 minutes. So a couple of things from me. I'd always take all the players, but they'd get equal game time. And what we would tend to do is that they'd kind of play a half each, if you like. So a half of a half. So I'd split it into quarters, and I'd already kind of pre-design who that was with. And then I'd look at the kids and think about the positions and the relationships between the different kids in different positions and things. So I'd always try and keep that group together, and I'd either give them they normally play 2 different positions each game as well. So they'd play 20 minutes, 10 minutes of the first half, 10 minutes of the second, but they'd have a couple of different challenges within that, and then tasks while they were off the pitch as well. And it seemed to work really, really well.
I've managed with positions is a great thing for us because we're a little bit behind in football development, in my view. But the goalkeeper was effectively the only player getting a position. I wasn't restricting anybody. Yeah. And obviously that can mean at times, 4 strikers and no defenders. And I started to 1 or 2 give little challenges to those I thought who could understand what I was perhaps asking me in terms of playing areas of the pitch to play in. When you get the ball, rather than can you look to give it to another player, simple instructions. I found I didn't tend to do the swap at half time when I took the 10 because I found because we were only playing 15 minutes a half, I could have a player on there for 15 minutes and not touch the ball, or 7 minutes say and not touch the ball. So I was conscious of trying to get them a whole set period without changing it.
Yeah. So there's a couple of things there. So you were talking about some of the kids having that sort of positional sense, and some of the kids not having that understanding. So again, for me, with those younger age groups and kind of helping me move forward with the group and become a little bit more infused and having that connection, was to find out what their prior football knowledge is and how that had developed. So my own set of circumstances, there was one of the dads was a season ticket holder at Spurs and was part of the Northampton Spurs group. So they'd always be travelling, they'd always be watching football. Another one who was a little bit more developed, who was actually playing up a year, but his older brother was in an academy system and his dad had played at semi-pro. So he'd always grown up around the game. So kind of setting challenges which are right for those individuals at that time to help them out. And of course, you'll get some kids that have never ever played the game before, and their only challenge might be, can you win the ball once? In the 10 minutes that you're on, can you win the ball once? How many times can you try and win the ball? But if you win the ball once, absolutely fantastic. So you're setting kind of little realistic challenges within the group that you're working with. I think Paul wants to come in.
Yeah, just because your initial thing, and I think it's the same for everybody, it was sort of mentioned, is the first day back with your kids. What's it going to look like? What's it going to feel like? How are you going to act with your kids? You mentioned about maybe being a bit demotivated or not sure where to go with it and such like. And I think that's a big thing. For me, when the kids first come back, they may have seen themselves each other at school. They might have had a little kick around in the playground if they're allowed to. I know at college we will be doing that. So they might come to you having had all that excitement of meeting their mates out of the window. That's all gone. But nevertheless, when they come back to whoever you've got or whatever age group, they'll just want to enjoy being together, kicking a ball around. And I think as a coach, you need to embrace the fact that, you know what, you're not going to get a lot done for a few weeks, for a few sessions. You're honestly not going to do much coaching. You're not going to look at some of the really great stuff that Quinton's mentioned there and you're doing already, Keith. You're not going to do that. It really is initially just letting the kids have fun, re-engage with the ball, re-engage with their friends, re-engage with you, smiles on faces, running around, lots of energy. And really, that's the first couple of weeks, first couple of sessions. That, for me, is what going back to football's about. Now, the things you mentioned a little bit further down the line for me, when you do start maybe getting into your matches and all that, which might be however long away. But initially, it's just getting that excitement of being with your kids again, looking at them as people, looking at the smiles on their faces and enjoying that moment. Because we've all missed that. I don't care who you are. We've all missed that fact of either playing football, coaching football, or seeing kids having a great time. Parents will love to see their kids running around with other kids. It's a massive thing for them to come back and do that. And I think we've got to be careful, Keith, but everybody, we've got to be careful we don't put too much pressure on yourselves and on your players when they initially come back. It's about fun, re-engagement, joy, playing matches, playing 2-a-side, 3-a-side, whatever it might be. That's what we have to embrace when we initially go back. Let the kids let off steam, let them do what they do without obviously being naughty, but let them have a great time with each other, just having fun. And I think for me, that's really important. Now, listen, I work with under 18s, and I know there was an open age coach there. That's all I'm going to do in my lot. I have them twice a week at college, away from match days, which obviously we're not playing. The first couple of sessions, I'm just going to let them cause chaos. I'm just going to let them go and have a ball and fun. No, I'm just going to let them do everything they would want to do over the park, over the common with their mates. That's all I'm going to do. And I advise you to do that initially, Keith. And then when that settles down, the excitement of being together, unfortunately, we've got Easter in between, so that might put a bit of dent in that. But when they all settle down and being together, then we can start looking at development and coaching and all those things that have been mentioned. But certainly initially, it's just enjoying the moment. Really is.
My plan, obviously, I found a great benefit. We had a Zoom call last week, and basically you're trying to have a little fun quizzes and bits, but in the end I didn't need to be there. They just wanted to talk to each other, arrange what they're going to do on Minecraft or whatever it is, Fortnite. I didn't need to be there. And that's, in the end, I just shut up and just let them talk to each other for 20 minutes. But the intention at the start when I got back was just to give them a ball and go and let them play.
Exactly.
For a night.
Yeah, the conversation you just had with them on your Zoom call is exactly the things that they'll want to be doing on that night. They'll just want to laugh at each other, push each other over and play tag and, try and megs each other. They'll try and do all the things that kids do. That'll be their night. It really will. And if you try and, I'm not saying you will or anybody will, but if you try and box that into something that's going to be productive, you're going to get very, very frustrated because that ain't going to happen.
No.
You know what I mean? They're going to listen and they're going to follow the rules and, this is the game. And, if the ball goes out, you kick it in and they'll follow the rules, but they won't want anything than just to muck about with their mates and talk to their mates. It's almost, as you've just mentioned there on your Zoom call, you don't need to be there. Just chuck them a ball. There's a 3-a-side over there. There's another 3-a-side over there, or whatever it might be, 3 and 2 and 2 because your numbers. Stand back and I'm just going to referee. Get on and play a game. And that'll be ideal for your kids. It really will, Keith, honestly. Okay. Yeah, and that'll enthuse you. You'll see them running around, having a great time. You go, blimey, I've missed this. I want to do this with these kids. And I think that's really important to get that mojo back into you as well, if you like.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I mean, just to reinforce the Quinton and Paul, just to add that I think your structure of your session that you mentioned earlier is sound, and you want to engage with the players and have games and during the practices, but don't sort of neglect the importance of the players playing in competitive games, if you like, i.e. friendlies. So I don't know what, I've had a couple of conversations with coaches locally, and what they're trying to do is obviously create a little sort of Champions League type setup with a group of, say, 4 or 5 other clubs or teams at their age group, where they think they're sort of similar to those teams, and then there's one a little bit stronger or one not so strong. So they're trying to get that balance right of just, perhaps, as you say, Keith, between now and the end of May, June, where they can play some 5v5 or even experiment with the 7v7 that you're moving up to. Just sort of throw in there an experiment and just a bit of trial and error, really. Go on, sorry, Keith.
That's basically what's happening. Obviously, because the league have got one arm tied to be on their back, not getting into anything, Luke. We now go forward. Somebody under 8 set up a WhatsApp group. Tell me your team. Tell me, rate yourself 1 to 4, and has pumped out a load of friendly fixtures for the next 6 weeks or so, or afterwards. Once the start from beginning of April. So we're engaging with that. We'll go and we'll just turn up and play.
No, that's brilliant. I think that's because ultimately the players need to work towards something. If there's a little fixture at the end of the week, they'll be just as excited as we as adults are, because we're just big kids at heart. So yeah, I think you're on the right lines. You're really sort of thinking, regarding the needs of the player.
Yeah, it's Andy here. My only worry was during the lockdown, I've done some Zoom calls, and or done videos of my lads that we shared, and only like 2 or 3 have engaged in it. The rest haven't. So we've got some that have been practicing through lockdown, and we don't know. I'm worried about the difference between them now. Has it gone too far between the good players and the weaker players?
Yeah. Oh, what's your age group, Andy?
We're under 9s at the minute.
Yeah, I mean, it might be a concern, but I won't worry too much about it, in the sense of just try and employ some of the work that Quinton and Paul have mentioned, because if you give them that environment to just, get in there with their mates and just don't worry, you can sort of build in practices to stretch and challenge them, but don't worry too much those first few weeks, just to sort of give them the opportunity to go and expend some energy, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
That they'll be great if they're just with their mates. There's just that social interaction.
Well,
Go on, yeah.
I've been driving around town, obviously going to work and whatnot, and I've seen dads with lads over the park, and the kids are running around. I've seen another one with a set of balls over the park doing whatever. So there are kids. You're quite right, Andy, when you're saying about, some will have done that, some will have the ability to have done that, others won't have the ability to do that. And I think when you get back in, you may find a difference of those that have and those that haven't. And it's like when we're talking about the physical corner, you'll have some. I've got learners that said to me, I've been out running 3 times a week, and I've got others saying, yeah, I've been playing on the PlayStation 7 days a week. So I've got a vast range, and so your younger kids, some will have been out and some won't, as you've alluded to. So I think, when you come to working with your players after the first few weeks, then you've got to start looking at your differentiation. You've got to start looking at the individual plan that Quinton has mentioned. For those that have pushed on maybe in this year, you might be looking at more different type of practices, more developed practices for those, and expectations for those that maybe haven't had the chance to go out, and there's some that maybe would love to have but not been able to for one reason or another. But there might be a different level where you have to think about their needs. So really, as a coach, it's really quite awkward for everybody going back under these circumstances of kids not really playing for a year, really. And I think as a coach, you need to try and think about the group, but also you need to look at your individuals within that group. And that's not to say you work more with I don't like using the word better, but more, your more developed players. You wouldn't necessarily work more with them, or those that are struggling to keep up. You wouldn't necessarily work more with those. You'll work the same with everybody, but just give them different tasks. And then hopefully they'll catch each other up. Or if they don't, well, so be it. In fullness of time they will, but it might not be a quick reaction to what you're doing. So I think, yes, you do need to think about individuals. You do need to look at differentiation. But again, a few weeks down the line, that's when you might start being concerned about it. And that's when you might need to do things about it. Does that make sense to you, Andy? Yeah?
Yeah, it does. Because the only thing that worries me was when I've been looking at planning sessions for when we come back, because what we've decided is we are just going to have a laugh.
Yeah.
We've set up a friendly against the year above, because we're at equal levels, really, of our own team. But then I was like, when we go back to us, we've split the groups up because there's 2 coaches. So one can work with slightly more developed players, doing some different techniques, then bring them together like towards the end, like for a game or similar sort of practices, you see. So that's the thing that I've been running through my mind. Would that be beneficial to them, splitting them up, or would you keep them together?
Andy, I was just going to say, because Paul was talking about differentiation, which is really important, and it's a technique that you use to help develop your players going forward. But I'd maybe just reframe it a little bit. So rather be worried about what you're going to find when you come back, because it would appear that only 2 or 3 are maybe independently training. What it's actually doing is giving you a real good insight. So you're starting to know your players and their background a little bit more. So what Paul was saying, I recognise as well. Sometimes you'll drive past a park and you'll see hoops and ladders, and it'll look like a dog agility course, and there'll be somebody who's going through a series of drills with a parent, and there'll be some that just won't kick a ball, that won't touch a ball, that won't have watched any football at all. So it's really interesting when you come back to understand exactly where your players are in terms of whether they've got that independent motivation to be playing, or whether it's driven a little bit more from maybe a parent, and it needs that structured environment that you're providing. So rather than sort of be a bit down on it, look at it as a way of gathering a little bit of intel and thinking about which kids have kind of naturally got that little bit of a head start, because they've perhaps got older siblings as well. So during lockdown, they've been able to go out with older or younger siblings and getting an opportunity to play. Parents might have been furloughed. Some parents might not have, had any opportunity to spend additional time with the kids and help them in that way. I know when I went back after the first lockdown, and Paul's kind of alluded to it as well with his college players, I don't think some have been out of bed for 3 months. Some of the kids that would get around the pitch better actually shocked me when we got back together again. So it gave me a little bit of an insight as to what those kids might need in terms of some additional help to get them back to where they were. But also, sometimes we talk about kind of the kids that are striving to keep up, that some people might term as being your weaker players, but gives you an insight into their character as well. So they're spending that time actually using it productively in terms of trying to better themselves as footballers. So it's kind of a negative, but if you reframe it a little bit, it could also work out in your favour, mate.
Thank you.
Can I just come in on what you asked, Andy? The question about splitting your group into two to have the strivers and the strugglers, if you like, working separately. I've done that, but I've done exactly the same drill with both groups of players. But the expectations are that the more developed players will work at a higher level. It might be quicker, it might be more detail, it might be a better quality, where the ones that are striving to keep up might have to do it slower, might be a little bit disjointed, etc., etc. But they generally will do the same type of practice, and moreover the exact same practice. But sooner or later your players have got to play together. Sooner or later you've got to integrate for the psychological reasons, the team sharing, the social reasons, the sharing, the finding out about your teammates going to give the ball away, or you've got to rely on each other, and so you do have to put them together, but you can, I think, take them separate as well. Andy said whatever works for you, Andy, and I think that's right. Whatever you feel helps develop the group of your players, you go with. But bearing in mind they do play together, therefore I think it's important that they do have that interaction, as not as much as possible, but certainly quite a little bit. But also they do try and do the same sort of practices at the same time. Yeah, that's really important for me as a coach of when I've worked with younger players, for sure.
Yeah, for me, I tend to get the kids working together. So the task is the same, but the success criteria is different based on where they are. I don't know what level of coach you are, Andy, but if you remember, I spoke about those kids that are forging ahead, those copers, and those that are striving to keep up. And I know that on the level one, we kind of asked the question, well, take 4 kids, categorise where they are within your group, if you like, and you might find that in terms of pressing, you might have a kid who is coping and then another kid who's forging ahead, but it might be in terms of dribbling that's turned on its head a little bit. And for me as well, it's not just about that technical execution, it's that sort of preparedness to undertake certain tasks and try certain things as well. So again, it's really useful to see where your kids are there, but I just tend to change the criteria for success. So for example, I might have a situation where we're doing a small-sided game and I'll be working with in essence, sort of 2 number 10s, 2 attacking midfield players. And for one of the number 10s, my instruction to the goalkeeper will be, can you give him a ball in the air? Can you find him? Can you give him a ball in the air? Because technically, he's going to be able to do that. For the other guy playing for the other team, my instruction to him is, can you find some space so that the goalkeeper could find you? It's just it's kind of the same task for playing the same role, but my expectation is different, because if that kid had to receive the ball in the air, they'd never bring it down. When the kid brings it down, brilliant. Show me that you've brought it down. Fantastic. We know what you're trying to do there. Fantastic little bit of an execution of a technique. Brilliant. For the other kid, he might not even receive the ball, but if he's found that little bit of space so that he could receive the ball, if the goalkeeper had spotted him and he recognises what he's done, fantastic. So it's the same task, but I've just changed the criteria for success a little bit.
James, you've got your hand up.
Yes, yeah. You guys were talking about sort of managing expectations, and I was just wondering if you had some advice, say, on the and energy levels, managing the differences between parents' energy levels and expectations, whether there is some sort of responsibilities that coaches have to manage that situation, because there's obviously going to be keen parents that are eager to return, but also on the flip side, parents that are less excited, say, about football coming back. So I didn't know if you had some maybe advice, or is that the coach's responsibility to manage that situation or not?
I think for me, it's just really the coaches have got to talk to the parents about what, if you go back to that social side again, if they've got a relationship with, there's that sort of triangular relationship between player, coach and parents, and it is really sort of, establishing what or getting to know your players, but also the parents, and just being able to discuss it. And just, again, it's about tempering someone's that's over expectations are that their son or daughter is going to be a professional footballer or whatever, and it's just really at 8s and 9s, it's just as you say, it's about really enjoying the game. It's a bit of serious fun. So mention about physical activity levels. The last thing you want to be doing is going and doing shuttle runs with 8 and 9-year-olds. Just make sure the activity, like Keith said, is they're active. The ball rolling time is high. They're being engaged and involved, so there's not a lot of standing around and not a lot of queuing and things like that. Give them lots of drinks breaks if they've just coming back, because they being youngsters, they'll their hydration levels are really important. So it's just making sure that they are active and involved and in all the activities. Luke, you've got.
Yeah, I was just gonna come on that, because I think the point around parents kind of ties in a little bit to some of the other things that you've talked about this evening. In terms of, we've talked about the coach's expectation of the players perhaps being a little bit lower in terms of their abilities, in terms of their fitness levels, and perhaps even their willingness to engage with drills and things like that, particularly in the early weeks. Keith mentioned earlier that he's concerned that a lot of teams are just going straight back into playing games. Is it a concern for us that we need to be managing the parents' expectations as well, in terms of actually the team performance that you're going to be watching in a match day isn't going to be anywhere near as coherent as it was perhaps before lockdown or last season or whatever, and what's the best way to sort of temper those frustrations perhaps that we know might flare up with certain parents anyway?
Yeah, can I just jump in there? Yeah, I think Andy made probably a really important point. You talk to your parents, you get them on your side, you explain what's going on. They need to have the same sort of conversation we're having in terms of the first 2 or 3 weeks. It's going to be murder and mayhem potentially, which gives you a great opportunity as coaches and managers, depending on your philosophy. Because if you set out the expectations of not being great going into your first game, because we've just got back together, and you say it's all about development, it's all about the next step, rather than winning a game. It's all about getting these to get re-engaged. It's all about these to think about their positions or whatever you want to focus on. You can keep that as a theme for a long time. Now, if you keep themes when you're working with your players and your parents know what those themes are, they become less looking at results and scoreboards, etc., but more than used to the fact that you're developing players rather than creating score lines. Now, I know this is a fact. I did this at Rushden Diamonds. I was there and I took the 8s through to under 14s, I think it was. And the first year I was there, and they were a good group of players, but the first year I was there, I don't think I won a game. We was playing Northampton, whoever it was. We never won a game. And I had to manage the parents' expectations of why that was. And it was because I was developing players, not winning games. Because if I wanted to win games, I'd get the keeper to kick it up front, and I'd have the quickest, biggest up front to go and try and get a goal. And that's not the way we did things. Year 2, we won a couple. Year 3, we won half. Year 4, we won most. And by the time we got to 14s, and it wasn't the leagues, you didn't have leagues in those sort of levels. At the end of the season of the 14s, the parent come up to me and said, you know, if we'd have played a league this year, we'd have won it by 27 points or 15 points or whatever it was. And I'm like, oh, yeah, really? That's good, isn't it? And I didn't really care about that whatsoever. So it's just building blocks of development for your players. So I think the first few games, you can really talk to your parents about not winning, not result. It's not about that because we've been away so long now. The kids have not played together for so long. They're not used to interacting with every. Now you're saying that you're not believing it because you want them to do this, but you're telling your parents this is the case. So when you do play and your kids aren't great and you lose, at the end of the game you say, listen, I'm really pleased with what we've done today. This happened and that happened and that happened. And I said at the start, don't worry about the result. That's irrelevant really, because that will come. If we do what we're doing, that will come further down the line. And I think it's a great opportunity to actually set yourself up as a coach that wants to develop players rather than the coach that wants to win games. But as Andy said, you need to keep your parents on side pre-game, post-game, training sessions to let them know that's where you're going with it. But don't say we don't want to win, because of course you want to win. Everybody does. Kids want to win. You as a manager wants to win. Your parents want to win. I want to win. You know, I was desperate to win as an under 8, under 9, but I weren't going to change what I was doing just to get a result. You have to have the moral code of sticking with that because results will come. So it's a great opportunity going back to use that as an excuse why you're not looking at results. And you can use that for a long time after that. So in answer to your question, Luke, I think it's really important.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I think there's probably some work that we can do as a county around promoting that message as well. Just to back up those conversations that coaches are going to have. Yes. A more generic message around the return to football and the attitude that people need to have towards it. I think that's a really good point.
And Luke's regarding parents and expectations. I'm quite lucky in that the group of parents we've got have a clear understanding of where we sit in ability and expectations, you know, what we can achieve. Again, my mantra every year to whatever team I've ever done has been, the only thing I can promise you is at the end of this season, them kids will be better players than when they started. Can't say I'm going to win a game, win a league. I mean, we haven't won a game for donkeys, but the parents are recognising the, you know, and actually commenting and praising. We have a WhatsApp group, you know, and after games there's a flow of comments and there's nothing negative ever on there. But they're understanding that the ability, albeit in small steps in some, is getting better. Let's say, and games, the winning games. We have 1 or 2 kids who come off the, you know, crying because we haven't won a game all season, but that's soon forgotten. And generally, you know, if we lost the game 9-1, you know, we'll go to walk off the pitch, and what are they doing? They're carrying on playing. You know, so you say that's been my experience at the moment is good. I've had the other side of it where I've had players leave because we're not as, you know, what we should. They're not expecting what they want to be. We're going to go and play for somebody else, going to go and do this. But I would say encourage that, you know, manage the expectations, let them know where you are, and say that simple promise. All you can control is making them players better.
Yeah, great point.
Agreed. Just on that, do you get frustrated when you lose your better players, Keith, or do you just take it as a part of, actually, this is my philosophy? They don't want to buy in, or that they haven't bought into my philosophy. Therefore, it's not a problem for them to go and think they can develop somewhere else. What's your thoughts when players leave?
Honestly, the players in the last couple of years, I lost two, I would consider exceptional players. They were sort of under 8 and under 10 age groups, one with the previous team. And it was good luck. I think you're ready for perhaps a challenge higher. Go and try that. Remember a couple of things. That there was one lad that he dominated games for us, and he wanted to go and play at a better level. So give him a blessing. Off you go. And the only thing I'd ever say to him was right thing, right time. That was the mantra. His mum, even his mum, remember what Keith says. And he went away, and I saw him about 2 years afterwards. And she said, we're still telling him that. That's that simple thing. Yeah. So I've got no problem if I think they're going on, or at the point where I can't. They need a structure that's better, or a challenge, say a higher challenge, and go with my blessing. If it doesn't work out, the door's open if you want to come back.
Fantastic. That I wish everybody adopted that attitude, Keith. I really do. I honestly do, because I think we as coaches, managers, should be in the business of helping the players to develop. Now, that's not to say we're going to develop players. They will develop themselves, but with us helping them. So we're in the business of doing that. If players have gone beyond us, or beyond the change we can give them, or whatever, and we can pass them on to the next level, I'm 110% for doing that. Whatever level you are, there's always going to be a next level. Even when you become a professional footballer playing for Northampton, there's a next level. So I always think, as a coach, as long as it doesn't bust your team up, you haven't got enough players, obviously, as long as you keep enough players, I think, that's a fantastic way of looking at your role in their development. It really is. And I go back to, I was telling the same old stories I used to tell on level 1. My dad was a coach, and he took us for donkey's years when I played in London, and we'd probably win a league one year and win a cup next year or whatever. But you look back and you remember, I was a professional player. Paul Walsh was a professional player. Andy Townsend we played against was a professional player. And it's the players that you played with and against that go on to things that people remember. And so that lad you're talking about, if he goes on to achieve, you'll remember him more than the leagues and cups. I know you're not winning at the moment, but if you were to, the leagues and cups you would win. It's about individuals, it's about players, and it's about life and helping people, get better or whatever. And I think that's a great attitude, Keith. Fantastic.
Similarly, Paul, you say about achieving, but also the fact that, as Andy alluded at the start, doing this almost 25 years now, and I, got kids coming up, blokes, somebody stopped in the street the other day, a few months ago. Hello, Keith, how are you? And I double taking. I realised I've had him at under 8, and he's 30 now.
Yeah. No, I get that. I have people come on the course full time in my team. Shows you how. So I get that. I go into a pub and there's somebody there who used to play for me. Do you want a drink? Yeah, fine, lovely. Thanks very much. So that does happen, and that's all you can do is hope you leave people with a good taste in their mouth and respect you for the person you've been.
Yeah.
And have you say hi, how you doing? That's always a good stuff. Always good, without doubt.
And Luke's regarding parents.
Firstly, thanks a lot for putting this session on today. It's great to have your time. Really good. Some of the subjects and topics you've touched on, certainly when Quinton was talking about playing all your players and taking all your players, it's something I manage under 9s, and I've had them since they were development squad, and we've kept that core 10 players together throughout it. And they're really good mates. But I think certainly at under 9 levels, I've probably seen the biggest sort of spectrum of ability and sizes and fitness levels. That has become a real challenge in managing. Certainly, we used to win some, lose some. It was quite an even balance. But certainly before lockdown, we were starting to take quite a few heavy defeats because some of the other lads weren't as developed. And I guess it is a bit of a concern now. We're going back, and that that spectrum is probably wider now, isn't it? That gap is probably going to be wider.
Because I was listening to Steve and he was talking about that sort of broad breadth of ability that he's got within his group, and the kids that might be struggling a little bit now might kind of be learning quite a few lessons, and when they come good, they'll be a bit more resilient. Whereas the kids that are flying now, who might take a little bit of additional time to kind of process that, might not really be ready for adding other bits to their game after they've had success up to this point playing in a certain way. So stick with it. I mean, my team that I've got at grassroots level, we're kind of out in the sticks. So just to try and link it in with what Keith was saying, when I get a player that's developing beyond the kind of generic level that we've got, then for me, my job is to help them move on. So I've had quite a few kids go and play in player development centres. If they're not going to play in player development centres, can they go to another club with maybe a slightly different ethos, but hopefully with the same calibre of coach? So that's part of my job as a coach, is to develop. But I also look at the kids that I've got, and there might be reasons why your kids are where they are. So I know that in the early age groups, you'll have the league up until Christmas, then we'll look at the results, and then we'll reshuffle, and post-Christmas, you'll be in a different division. Now, it's non-competitive, and you don't know what division that you're in, but actually you do. Actually, you know where you are. And I know, because like I said, my kids are out in the sticks, the player pool's not massive. Not going to get loads of kids. And when I look at the makeup of my group and I recognise that, you know what, majority of them are post-Christmas, so they're in the second half of the academic year, so a little bit younger. I also look at and see if they've got older siblings that are playing the game. And actually, do you know what? They're not. So I recognise kind of pretty much where we are. But my job is to kind of see those other sets of circumstances, recognise why we're perhaps where we are, but not stop trying to make them and help them become the best players that they can be. And some will be motivated to really, really play as much as they possibly can and become terrific. And some just want that social interaction, want the laugh, and hopefully the way that we develop our coaching sessions gives them what they want for the stage and the age that they're at.
Yeah, it's great advice. Thank you.
I'd just like to ask one question, and it's kind of from a selfish point of view, and directed towards Keith's first point right at the very start around engagement and feeling disengaged. Because, like I said then, I think there's going to be a number of coaches in a similar position, and I just wonder if there's anything that you think, Keith, that perhaps we could do as a county FA to re-engage or to help those coaches feel a bit more supported, or anything that we can do to make the transition back into football a little bit easier and potentially more enjoyable.
If you're asking me, Andy, I think it's just getting people back at it, emphasising how much we love it. I sit as Saturdays and the mornings. Normally, I'm up at the crack of dawn. Saturdays, Saturday dawn, you go up there, you put the goals up. It'd be almost your day would have gone because you're involved with it. In fact, you take that away and you say, I think emphasise how much fun it is and what you miss, trying to remind people of what they're missing. If their mindset is the right, as Paul's alluded to, if the mindset's right, how much you've missed this, how good it is to watch 10 kids running around, having the time of their life. I mean, as you say, you only got to turn up and give them a ball.
Yeah. Okay. No, that's brilliant. Appreciate you guys taking the time to dial on and give us your concerns and your thoughts on the return to football. I think there's been some really good discussions there, and some useful things for us to share moving forwards as the return to football does get a lot closer. If you need us in the meantime, if anything springs to mind, if any future concerns crop up, you know where we are. You've got James's email. Just drop him an email, pick up the phone, and if it's something that myself or James can't deal with, then obviously we can pass on to one of the team that we've got with us tonight, helping us with this session and their expertise, and they'll I'm sure they'll be in touch and happy to help. So there are no issues with that. So please do utilise that as much as you can. As I said, we're gonna look to run these types of sessions more often. So we've got 3 future sessions planned between now and what will be the end of this season, and then we're in the process of developing a CPD package and syllabus moving forwards into next season. So again, hopefully there will be loads of stuff out there for you as coaches to support you and your development, which will have a positive effect on you and the teams in which you're coaching. But for now, I think that's been a really beneficial.
Can I just say one thing? Yes. I think your biggest challenge, and I think it's shown by, who's here on this, is engaging people. There are hundreds of coaches out there doing teams, and Andy will suffice. That's why I've stalked him, because it is you used to get the CPD events, and it's the same people. You knew the guys who were going to turn up because they had the in. It's selling and engaging everybody into this, development or this mindset.
Yeah.
Right. And because I'm sure there'll be people out there who don't realise that these things exist, or,
Yeah, that's it. And I think that's one of the benefits of recording tonight is we can still get the content out and share it far and wide and raise the profile of what we're trying to do. Because it's not perhaps something that the NFA have been associated with in the past, or doing it as proactively as perhaps we're trying to do now. So that's a thought process change from our side, and definitely a positive one in my opinion. So hopefully we can get that change and that across to everybody, and then maybe we can get a bit more of a buy-in to what we're trying to do as well. But yeah, that's definitely one of our challenges, Keith. Absolutely. Yeah. Okay, so once again, thanks everybody. Thanks for you guys for dialing in. Thanks to the team for their great insight this evening. It's been brilliant, and I hope to see you all in the next couple of months or so on one of our future events.
Great, thanks a lot.
Yeah, cheers guys.